You finished 3,060,559 in 2024. You were number one last year. You're number one this year so far. What is the mentality and what's the attitude to stay at the top?
It's just one call at a time. What can I do for this homeowner? How can we solve their problems? And how can I make the best of some opportunities here? Run every call with that mentality. The numbers will follow. I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, I need to do 3 million. Sure, I've got goals in mind and I have personal goals and stuff like that. But that's not what's driving me to do it necessarily, because if you just have the numbers in mind, you're always going to be behind.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Wisdom of Wrench podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Comerford. We've got a great show for you today. Looking forward to it because we have got one of the top electrical salespeople, actually the top electrical salesperson throughout all of Wrench on the show today. This gentleman, who, in my opinion, is the Roger Bannister of electrical sales. What do I mean by that? Roger Bannister, in the 1950s, was the first person to run the 4-minute mile. And after he ran the 4-minute mile, within 6 months, there were multiple people that ran the 4-minute mile. Once he proved that it could be done, many people followed in his path, but it took somebody to break through that barrier. Well, the person that we're interviewing today on the podcast, his name is Wolfgang Kiess. He, in 2024, did over $3 million in electrical sales. Huge accomplishment. Huge, first time it's been done by a Wrench team member. Looking at where the GOAT Awards and the GOAT rankings are right now, it looks like we will have multiple people that will do 3 million in 2025. By the way, Wolfgang, once again, Wolfgang is out in front for 2025. So it's going to be an exciting time, exciting push. So let's welcome Wolfgang to the show. Wolfgang, great to have you.
Kevin, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's really cool that you are in your vehicle because this is the kind of interview that I love to do. Somebody that is right on the ground floor like you are, who already has ran 2 calls, right? Has already ran 2 calls this morning. And
looking to do 2 more after this, hopefully.
And looking to do 2 more after this. So thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show. But again, how can this get any more authentic? I love it.
Yeah.
So as I said, you finished 3,060,559 in 2024. You finished $700,000 above the second place finisher. So just crushed it, Wolfgang. So again, thank you, Roger. I know I'm going to call you Roger and Wolfgang throughout the show. So thank you for breaking through and shattering that $3 million mark and showing all of us that it's possible in electrical sales. So why don't you start by just sharing a little bit about your background and how you got into the trades and specifically how you got into electrical at Baker.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. I pretty much was in some form of like the service industry for the majority of my life. So grocery stores primarily, bars, restaurants, that kind of thing. I was working for one company in particular for 13 years there. And the minimum wage in Seattle went up to $15 an hour about 8, 9, 10 years ago, something like that. And all of the raises had to go to the bottom, right? So us managers at the top basically didn't see any raises for a couple of years. I'd always really wanted to get into the trades, but it's one of those things where you make this massive career swap and it's very scary, right? Along with taking a huge pay cut to become an apprentice and start from the bottom of something is daunting. So my wonderful wife, Eva, told me, this was early in our relationship, she just said, hey, why don't you just do it and we'll figure it out? And that's pretty much all I needed to hear. And so I quit my job and became an electrical apprentice and took a huge pay cut to get into a field that I wanted to do, that I saw more of a future and more growth in. So March 19th, 2019, I became an electrical apprentice for a little company in Seattle, Washington, and started off doing service work there for a couple months, and realized quickly it's very, very tough for an electrician to get right into service, especially someone like me who really had no background in any sort of construction or anything like that. And after about 3 months of that, they put me onto a new build team. So I was building like higher end, multi-million-dollar new builds in Seattle, Washington, kind of like the Bellevue area. And once I got to learn kind of how a house was built and how things worked, and I got to do that for about a year, then I moved back into service, and they gave me my own van. I got my own apprentice, and I got to start running my own jobs. And that's when I really started understanding, residential electricity more, right? That's when I really fell into my groove. And I worked at that company until we moved through the pandemic, which was, tough for people all over the place. Decided to move to Texas about 3 years ago for multiple reasons. We won't get into all that. And I sent my application out to multiple different companies. And Baker Brothers and Wrench, being as awesome as they are, had one of the best recruiting systems in the Dallas area. Got back to me immediately. It was the first person to schedule me for an interview. Multiple companies didn't even respond to me, right? So I get this message back and I look up Baker Brothers, and it's this huge company, which I knew nothing about, right? I worked for this tiny kind of more mom and pop type deal. And I remember telling my wife when I was going into an interview with James, who's our VP of electric here, and I said, you know what, I'm not going to take this job. I haven't interviewed for anything in a while. It might be good to grease the wheels here and just see what happens. I left that interview with James, and we hit it off so well that I called my wife and I said, I think I'm going to take this job. And I actually had another interview scheduled, and I was going to drive to it. And I pulled up the maps to go to it, and it was about an hour away from my house. And I was thinking, I'm probably going to have to go to this office a lot. It's an hour away. Not super excited about this opportunity. And I called James back and basically took the job on the spot there, and then canceled the interview before I even went to it. Wow. And so it was my first job I've had in Texas, and I love Baker Brothers. I've been with them ever since. So it's been a little over 3 years now. Like I said, March 8th, 2022. So been a little over 3 years now.
That's great. And I think you had to go through a certification process in Texas, right? To get your electrical license.
So when I first started with Baker Brothers, nobody except for the managers knew I was an actual electrician because my hours didn't transfer over. There's different licensing in Texas. So basically I had to retest for my license here, but there's a time period I have to wait for the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration to approve my hours. And so that took a couple months actually. So James said, hey, he didn't tell me at the time, but he's told me now. He said he saw something in me, didn't want to lose the opportunity to hire me. And so he just hired me on for the wages that we had agreed upon. And he said, I'm just going to pay you the regular wages. You're just going to pretend to be an apprentice. You're going to ride with different guys, learn how the company works. Cause I couldn't technically do my own electrical work and ride my own van and all that. And so everyone thought I was an apprentice for a couple months. I was riding along with a couple guys and helped on jobs, helped on some installs, that kind of thing. And then I got my license and started riding in a van and was basically doing kind of normal service stuff for a while. And James came back to me and he said, hey, Wolf, how would you feel about turning into a commissioned employee, which is kind of veering towards the sales sides of things? And I said, I did some math real quick and decided, this seems like this would be a raise essentially, right? Let's do it. And then from there, kind of led into the sales team. And next thing you know, I was kind of doing this sales thing full time.
So good. Can we go back a little bit to something you said earlier? let's give huge props to the recruiting team at Baker.
Well, the recruiting team,
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was Michelle and maybe Stephanie, but the recruiting team at Baker Brothers were on it. They were so on it. It was crazy. They were so communicative. It was great. They reached out. They were friendly. They were welcoming. And James too, the VP of sales. The electrical department was a little bit smaller 3 years ago than it is now. And so there were a lot less managers, and James was handling, he was wearing a lot more hats back then. And so he was the one who interviewed me. I don't even think he does interviews anymore. And, he was great too. If I can't say James was a huge part of it, and the rest of the team. Basically, Baker Brothers sold me on wanting to work for them.
Oh yeah.
I have a kind of mentality when I go into an interview that they're not interviewing me. I'm interviewing the company. Is this going to be a good fit for me? Is this going to work for me? Is this going to work for, my ethics, my morals, my business standards? Do I want to work here? And if the answer is no to that, I don't care what they think about me. I don't want to work there, right? And I walked out of that interview going, oh, this seems like a good fit. So Baker Brothers did a good job of passing
Clearly.
my interview, when I was in there.
It's funny you say that because I've always been a believer that in any situation, always be the buyer versus the seller.
Yeah.
Never be the seller. Like there's no reason.
Well, it's funny. When I made that mental switch to work an interview backwards, it's a game changer, right?
And
Because
I wonder, and we'll talk about this. I wonder how that applies to when you're with a client. Because if the client,
sure it's the same
if the client
thing,
thinks if the client thinks that this guy needs my business, this guy needs, they're never going to buy from you. If they see desperation, so we'll come back to that. But I bet there's something that you're doing when you're in the home. That's because I know we're going to talk about, hey, what is it that you do world class? We might have just gotten the black swan, which is the unique thing that is just the one or two things that someone does. You might just have that always go in as the buyer versus being a seller. We'll hold that for now. We'll come back to it. I want to talk about something you said. You said Eva, your family. I want to ask you about the rest of your family. Eva sounds like she was your Adrian from the movie Rocky. When all she had to say, all Adrian had to say to Rocky is go win, and that inspired him. Sounds like all Eva had.
No, she's always biggest supporter by far.
Yeah, all Eva had to say to you was, "Go do it. We'll handle it," and that's all you needed to hear.
Well, one of the best qualities about her is she will always see the best in me, right? And just like James saw in our interview, she saw when she first met me, and she said, here's a guy who has a lot of potential, who's in a management position, but working in a grocery store, who I just think could do a lot more, right? And she said, well, if you think electrical is it, let's check it out, right? Because we're not getting any younger here. Let's do it.
I love it.
So
that's great. So you mentioned earlier that you were in the restaurant business. You worked at, it sounds like, bars. You worked in the grocery stores. So you have been working with the public. How do you think those prior jobs helped you in electrical?
it's just customer service at the end of the day. Yeah. I mean, customer service is essentially what all businesses should boil down to, right?
But what does that look like?
It helped me.
What does that look? Be more specific. When someone says customer service, I'm not totally clear. How does that show up for you every day?
Natural interactions with customers, good interactions, with customers. So I didn't really put this piece of the puzzle together. I went to a training. Have you heard of Certain Path?
I have.
I went to a Certain Path training a couple weeks ago, and I didn't realize something, but I was sitting across from a guy who owns a company in California, and they group you into bundles, and we're talking amongst other electricians, and one of these scenarios came up where they want you to role play with each other. And I kind of, not very loudly. I just kind of, said, a little sigh and roll my eyes and like, I really, it's not my favorite thing to do these role plays, right? But I get it's a big part of the training and I like it. And the guy noticed across the table from me, he goes, "Hey, what's going on?" I said, "It's just not my favorite thing to do these role plays." I said, I've never really seen the point in doing these. And he says, "Well, that's because you don't need it. This stuff comes naturally to you. You talk to people. You get how to interact with, you get how to human, you know what I mean?" So I think that doesn't come as naturally to some people. And I didn't really realize that. I thought you just go into someone's house, you start chatting with them, you build a rapport. It's just what you do. But, I think it's a little bit more robotic for a lot of people out there, which is a huge part of, why some guys perform better in this industry than others, right? You're going in, you're literally just looking at the job and you're tunnel visioned on the problem you're there for. And at the end of the day, that's what we're supposed to do, right? But when you're giving better customer service, you're making these connections with customers. I think it's huge, right? And that kind of makes a big difference.
I love that. What did you say? You get how to human.
Yeah.
Is that what you get?
Yeah, it's a term
that's such a that's such a cool quote.
Uses. And when you have an interaction with somebody and it's just super awkward, you're like, "What was that? That felt like I was dealing with like an AI bot or something," right? You just go, "That person needs to learn how to human," right? It's something you still say. So
I love that. It reminds me of something that when I'm too active and moving all the time, my wife just tells me, "Kevin, just be a human being rather than a human doing." She reminds me, just be there's no need to be a human doing. Just sit here and let's just be together. Yeah. So that's great.
But,
I love that.
The reason that you're able to run this podcast is because you can interact with people, right? You build instant rapport. You're good at talking, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. So we should put you in some houses and see how you do.
Well, let me assure you, Wolfgang, right out of the gate, before we even started this podcast and we started just chatting, it was so apparent that this is your gift. So it is what I love what you said. And this is another takeaway. It's how to have natural conversations with clients. Natural. And you think you learn that from all the reps you got working in a restaurant, working in a bar, working at a grocery store.
Customer service definitely helped, right? Because you're just talking to people all day long, right? Yeah. So you need to devise a way to very quickly, right, build good rapport with somebody, right? And I think I've just kind of subconsciously developed these methods over time. And when I go to these trainings and talk to people like now with you, I start to realize this stuff. Oh, I do that, or I do this, and it's something that it does come naturally to me now, but it's stuff I've built up over time. I wouldn't say that if you would have, popped me in this trade 20 years ago as an electrician, if I'd necessarily be doing as well as I am now, because it's probably like life experience. Listen, I didn't become an electrician until I was 35. So I already had some good life experience, right? A lot of these guys start this when they 18, 19, 20, 21. So, it's a little different. So I probably had a little step up from that, just with some wisdom and some life experience.
So in addition to life experience, have you studied? I mean, obviously you went to this certain path. So you're going to educate yourself. Is there other things that you do or that you could suggest to young people that are getting into this trade, in particular on the sales and service side, that you would suggest that they get into? Is there anything that really helped you?
So the first thing you need to know is your trade, right? So once you start getting into advanced trainings, sales trainings, that kind of thing, that's all great. But if you don't know what the product is you're selling, people don't want to buy it from you, right? So the first thing I focused on when I was an apprentice is I really focused on learning electrical, and not just, learning a couple codes or this or that, but trying to dive a little deeper in the theory of electricity, like how that stuff works, and then looking deeper into products, whatever it is, just learning everything about the trade. And then as soon as I hit an obstacle with the customer, I need to learn more about that. I need to learn more about this. But to kind of more short form answer your question, yes, I did a lot of learning and continue to do so now. that's just, it always looks like something a little different, right? So now I don't learn as much about product and as much about electrical or code or anything like that. Now the stuff I learn is more human interaction, sales training, you know, reading stuff like that. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, watch videos, you know.
Anything in particular that you can share
I mean,
that's
there's
helped you?
tons of stuff out there. So one of the books I just picked back up, which I read part of and then had to put down for whatever for life, for 4 kids, whatever reason, right? Is Never Split the Difference, which is written by, I forget his name. He's an ex-CIA guy.
Chris Voss. I think
A
it's
lot of
Chris
people know this
Voss.
book. Sorry, what?
Chris Voss.
Yes, that sounds right. I just finished A Man's Search for Meaning, which I had never read before, which is not necessarily anything about sales or anything like that, but that just is one of those must read books. But I just read a lot of either inspirational books, informational books, lots of podcasts. So I'll listen to stuff like this, right? So podcasts, videos, talking to other technicians, I'll take information wherever I can get it. One of the biggest things that I've done in my career is just have conversations with other technicians, and they don't really know I'm doing it, but I'm listening to all the small stuff they say. Like, let's talk about a job. Like, how was your day? What kind of calls did you run? And as they're saying things, I'm picking up on things that they do in their calls that are fantastic, or they give me ideas to do things that are great, and I do a lot of that. So like, ooh, I like this, I like that. Take it all, make it my own.
I love that. You've given us a number of different things, having conversations with technicians, the ability to be able to listen, the ability to be able to be coachable, to be a lifelong student.
It's funny. 10 minutes before we started this, right, I was talking to my boss and my dispatcher. Shout out to Trey and Destiny. They'd be mad if I didn't mention them. And they were mentioning we've got membership plans, right? So you sell a membership plan. Hey, be part of the Baker Brothers family. You get additional discounts, this, that, and the other. One of the other techs. So right now we're a little bit slower. Calls are a little bit lighter this month, and I've been just really honing in on trying to get memberships, right? So just trying to build customers and get those lifetime customers, letting people know we do 3 trades, this, that, and the other. And she was telling one of our other technicians, who was like, "Oh, the calls are a little bit slower, and I'm having a slow week, and I'm a little worried." And she said, "Well, hey, Wolf's focused on memberships right now. Why don't you do that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I don't know, because he's crushing it with memberships this month, and I don't really know, how he does it." And it's funny because I just talked to him 2 weeks ago, and he mentioned something that he did with a membership that I went, "Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. I've been using it the last 2 weeks. And last week I sold, I think, the most memberships I've ever sold in a week because of something he told me." And then he's the one saying, "I don't know how Wolf does it." I'm like, "You gave me the idea that I've been using the last 2 weeks." And he doesn't even know he said it, right? So, it's
so
just
good.
really, really honing in on that kind of thing.
What I like that you just said that I think everybody in Wrench can use is, hey, I'd love you to become part of the Baker Brothers family. That you can say, I mean, what a great intro. Become part of the Red Top. Become part of the Morris Jenkins family. What a great way to introduce the memberships. Are you using like an intro statement like that? Because that was really cool.
Yeah, it depends on the home. You got to gauge your customer. Some people, are going to hear something like that and think it sounds really cheesy. Some people might hear that and go, "I want to be part of the family," right? It's just, that's when you kind of, every customer is a little bit different. But yes, I've definitely said that to people before.
That's great. That's great.
Everybody wants to be part of some sort of family or group, right?
Tribal.
Subconsciously, we all want to be part of something. Yeah, tribal, right? We're a tribal beings.
We are. Yes. So that's again, folks, you can pretty much turn off the podcast now. You got everything that you possibly need to know. You got it. No, just kidding. Wolf. I know you. I noticed you said Wolf. Is it Wolf or Wolfgang? What do you prefer?
I don't know when I said that. Everyone calls me Wolf. Doesn't matter what I tell people. Some people call me Roger. I don't know why, but it's everyone ends up calling me Wolf at some point.
I love
So
that.
yeah, no, it doesn't matter what I say, and everyone has, and it doesn't doesn't bother me in the slightest. Wolfgang, Wolf,
Great.
whatever works for you.
So let's, before we leave your Eva, real quick, you said you've got 4 children. I heard you say that.
Yes, sir.
Shout out to your 4 children. Tell us about family real quick, if you would.
Yeah, so wife and 4 kids. I've got a 12-year-old and I've got 3 kids under 5. So you can do the math there. None of them are twins.
Wow, I
Yeah.
love it. Well, I was going to ask you what inspires you each day. I think you might have just answered that for me.
I just answered that question, right? That's a big part of it. Kids, family. I was talking to James, the VP again a couple days ago, and I told him, you know what, like I noticed this when I have days off that are not planned. So we had to take Memorial Day off, and my kids they were having a day on Memorial Day, right? I was trying to get stuff done around the house. They were a little extra needy this day, and I just turned to my wife and I jokingly said to her, but part of it was I said, I miss work. I miss work. Sounds kind of nice right now. I think I'm going to be one of those guys. I think statistically it's proven that when people retire, if they don't find something to keep themselves busy, they tend to die faster. Like within retirement, it shortens your lifespan, right? I'm going to be one of those guys. Like if I retire and I don't have something to keep me busy, I'll pass away quickly. So, I mean, staying busy drives me. My family drives me, right? There's things like that.
I
I
can
don't
tell,
really care as
Wolfgang.
much about, like success is great. I love success. I don't care as much about, material things. I don't have anything weird like that. That like, oh, I got to get this car or do this or that, or I want my family to live a great life. I want them to do well. I want them to be happy. I want them to be proud of me. So that really drives me. I'm very family oriented. So
That's great. That's really cool, and thank you for sharing that. I can tell, and you don't mind if I call you Wolf?
no, not at all.
Great. I can tell, Wolf, that you will be very much like myself. I made the decision that I'll never retire. I'm actually in the process of what I refire. I've just refired.
Yeah.
Doing something
Just
else.
do something different.
Just do something different.
Or just spice it up. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you've been a top performer, clearly, for several years. How is it? Well, what is the mentality and what's the attitude that it takes for you to stay at the top? Again, I said you were number 1 last year.
So
You're number 1 this year so far.
it's a good question. It's funny because you were talking about the whole, what was the Rogers last name?
Roger Bannister.
Roger Bannister. You were talking about him. I didn't have any expectation of what a top performer needs to look like. I didn't look at any number. I wasn't looking at these numbers or looking at, Wrench Group nationwide 3 years ago when I started, or when I got into the sales team. I knew that there were guys, like I knew some numbers and I knew some top performers and what they looked like, but I didn't have this number like, hey, 3 million's unattainable. I didn't have that in my head. No one had said that to me. No one had put that there. So I didn't have any expectations or limitations. So, it's just one call at a time, right? You go into the house and what can I do here? What can I do for this homeowner? And how can we solve their problems? And how can I make the best of some opportunities here, And I think if you just run every call with that mentality, the numbers will follow, the sales will follow. I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, I need to do 3 million. Sure, I've got goals in mind and I have personal goals and stuff like that, but that's not what's driving me to do it necessarily. Because if you just have the numbers in mind, you're always going to be behind, right? You're always going to be, or you're down 1 month and you're going to get in your own head. And so it's just, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at it all the time. Don't get me wrong, right? But doing your best to just take it one call at a time and just, what can I do? I mean, at the end of the day, we're in these homes for these people. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to pretend that every homeowner is, if I envision that my wife is there and I'm at work and I've got, someone coming to quote something and I'm not able to be there, right? So my wife, who doesn't know as much about this industry, is there and this technician's coming in, right? I put myself in that scenario, right? How would I want someone to treat this call if it were my wife here and I weren't around? So I think if I can do that, then I'll do the best I can on every call.
Mm-hmm.
And that ultimately drives to the numbers in the sales. So
Great stuff. Great stuff, Wolf. Really. I love what you said when you said, when there's no expectations, there's no limitations. That was powerful. I also love what you said. If I have numbers, and I don't even know if you meant to have a rhyme, but it rhymed. If I have the numbers in
no, I didn't.
mind,
What did I say?
you said if I have the numbers in mind, I'll always be behind.
Okay. No.
So good.
Yeah, no.
So good. And so simple. Like, it's so simple to say, Wolf, like, okay, I got to take it one call at a time. I've got to
It's
make,
hard to do though.
yeah, yes. That's
It's
what I
hard to
want to
do.
dig in on.
I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. Talk to my dispatcher. She, I'm not perfect. Talk to my wife. I'm not perfect, but I try my best.
Yeah. But it sounds to me like you're at least aware of when you're not in that mood or you're not in that frame of mind. Because what I've seen is nobody's perfect. anybody in wrench, anybody I've interviewed, nobody's perfect, and we all know that. The
Yeah.
top performers, though, I think have this awareness when they know they're not in that right space, and it's, to
If you're not
me,
cognizant that you are in a bad mood, you're not going to do well.
yeah.
I had a terrible month, February of last year, and I was in a bad place mentally, right? Everyone around me knew it. My kids, my wife, my coworkers. And I think it was the only month, because we do internal kind of competitions too. I think it was the only month last year that I didn't get top performer. And at the end of the month, I had to have a little chat with myself in the mirror. And I basically just said, what are you doing? What's going on here? Right. I think one of the problems with people today and, younger generations especially is everything must be someone else's problem. I'm a victim, and I'm very much a firm believer of look in the mirror first. Let's see if there's something I can solve, and then we'll look externally. And so what I really realized from that month is, probably 80, 90% of this job is mental, right? If I'm in a good headspace, the rest will come. So I had to reformat everything after that. What can I do to never get here again? And I think I've been I would hope that my wife would attest to that I changed after that February, my coworkers, that even if there's tough weeks, there's tough calls, there's tough days, turn it right back around. Oh, that wasn't perfect. Let's see what we can do on the next one. Let's see what we can do next week. See what we can do next month. You know what I mean? Like, let's keep pushing forward. So that was a huge turning point for me. And I mean, you could, if you pulled up a sheet of numbers and looked before and after that February, you'll see what changed here. What is he doing different? What changed? Because there's like a huge shift, right? It was literally just coming to that realization.
Is there anything you can point to that specifically changed? Like, is there, besides the awareness, but is there anything that Wolf specifically did after February 2024 to be able to pull yourself out?
I think that looks different for everybody
Okay.
because you need to find. Have you ever seen Happy Gilmore?
Mm-hmm.
Find your happy place. So what does that look like for you? You know, for me, it's like I said, family. At the end of the day, when I go home, when you're driving and someone cuts you off, you're not going to remember it 30, you're honking at them, do whatever it is you do to someone who cuts you off. You're not going to remember it a minute later, right? So when I go home at the end of the day, work is gone. I'm with my kids. I'm with my wife now, right? And that's, work is important. It is, but the family, like that's what matters. So if I'm putting that much stress on myself for this and it makes me worse at this, this is lose-lose, right? So like I said, whatever that looks like for different individuals, you just got to find it, figure it out, and then get your head right. Because you're going to be hurting yourself.
Would you say that you made more of a conscious effort after February of 2024 to be present with your family than before?
Yes.
February 2024?
100%. Yep.
Okay.
I didn't realize
that's
I
huge.
didn't realize as much. Well, and I was not to say like I was, not around or angry all the time with them or anything like that, right? But I noticed, I noticed it like, hey, I'm not my best, not only at work, but at home when I'm in my head about work, right? And that can't happen, right? As soon as work is affecting my home life, work needs to change, whatever that looks like. So for me, I knew the answer wasn't Baker Brothers isn't the fit. It was, what am I doing here? Right. So I made that mental shift and try not to look back. Right.
So good. So much good stuff, Wolf. Tell me about some success habits that you have in place mentally or physically, because it takes a lot to go out and do what you do every day by yourself in your car. Whether it be physically, emotionally, what are some of the things that you do that you think you do world class when it comes to success habits?
As far as physical goes, with 4 kids and a full-time job, obviously there's not too much physical stuff I'm doing. I'm not like a crazy exercise freak or anything like that. I try and eat well. I try and get as much sleep as I can. That's still not as much as I want to be getting, but sleep is really important. Diet is really important. And as far as mentally, it's basically what we just talked about, right? Because for me, a lot of stuff I'm selling, I'm not installing. So the physical part isn't as important. I need to be fresh in my head. Like that's where, like I said, my job is 80-90% mental, right? Maybe 10-20 physical. So whatever that looks like, just to keep me right in the head, keep me in a good mood, keep me fresh, awake, So I think it's basically just falls back to the previous topic we were on.
Yeah, tell me about, you said diet. Anything specifically you can talk about? Because I agree with you. Diet's so important.
Sure, yeah.
Are any of us perfect? No, but I just would love to know how you do it.
And I'll tell you, I'll be upfront about the stuff I'm not perfect with. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've cut almost all seed oils out of our house. That's a big one, except for the occasional Best Foods and/or Hellman's, whichever, depending on what state you're in. Hellman's mayo, right? That's like one of my food vices. So if we'll have burgers or something, a sandwich, for me, it's got to be the Hellman's. It's got to be the Best Foods mayo. Other than that, we don't do seed oils with anything. We try and stray away from wheat and carbs as much as possible. We try and do a lot of protein and vegetable meals. And we try and do very little to no processed sugars as well. So my coffee in the morning's got maple syrup in it and grass-fed cream, so like I'm very, it's funny because in Seattle, that was like a very normal thing to have diets like that. But here it's very hippie, right? In Texas. So I've got a very bougie diet as far as a lot of my coworkers are concerned. I don't eat barbecue in the morning, but for me, I mean, it makes a difference. It definitely makes a difference. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
because
you can
if
tell.
I haven't eaten fast food in over 5 years. If I were to eat, if I eat like a cruddy meal, I feel it. I feel lethargic. I feel gross. You're running to the restroom. You know what I mean? Like it physically and mentally affects you. So the diet is really important. I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in what you just said, which is your gut is your second brain. So
Yep.
if I'm putting crap in my gut, it is going to screw up my whole mentality. So
Yeah.
that's that you and I are. That's so good. That's so good. Haven't eaten fast food in 5 years. What a message to all the technicians, salespeople, installers that are
Yeah.
out there that are driving around like you every day, who see that fast food and make a stop. Where are you stopping, or what are you eating instead of fast food? And it is
So
it a lunch? Go ahead.
I generally don't eat much during the day. Every now and then I'll have something. My one, my one other vice besides the mayo is Reese's peanut butter cups. I am a fiend for Reese's peanut butter cups. So if I want a treat, that's what I'll treat myself. And that's why I said try and do no processed sugars. It's like the one thing. Yeah, I can't give them up. Beef sticks, beef jerky, things like that.
Yeah. So
Generally,
that's what
I don't eat
so
during the
you're
day. Normally I have a massive dinner. I have coffee in the morning. Sometimes I'll snack during the day. Things like, like I said, like beef products, protein, things like that. And then at night, my wife just usually makes a huge dinner that usually consists of lots of protein and lots of vegetables. And then I'll just load up then, bunch of vitamins and boom.
you mentioned earlier the switch, and whether it was mentally that you went through going on a commission based pay system.
Actually, I'm glad you
And
bring this up. Yeah, that's huge too. Like mental switches are massive. But yeah, continue with the question. I'm sorry.
well, you were going somewhere with it, so I'd love you to. Unless I mean, I've got a question, but it sounds like you were headed somewhere around it.
Yeah, no. So when when I made that swap, there was two huge switches that happened in my mind. And both of them were because of so when we swap to commission, we don't get paid hourly anymore, right? So two things happened. I started performing much better because my my family's livelihood was now dependent on it, right? Because if it's slow, or if I'm not doing well, or not selling a lot of calls, or not installing a lot of things, I'm still getting paid hourly. I'm still getting my paycheck, right? Family's still going to eat. But now it's on me. Now I need to do well, right? So there's that. It's a huge switch. And the other reason I know that there's this mental switch is I was really good about clocking in and out when your money's tied to it, right? I completely stopped clocking in and out, even though we still need to do so for the rents group, because you have to A, clock your hours for your licensing purposes, and B, we need to be on the clock for insurance purposes, right? If you're driving a car, you get in a crash, you need to be on the clock, right? Um, I'm sure there's other things I don't know about that are important too to be on the clock, but I realized because I stopped clocking out, and my boss at the time said, "Hey, you got to clock in and out because I'm having to do this for you, and I don't want to do your work for you, right?"
Right,
And it
right.
kept happening, and eventually he
Yeah.
told me, he goes, "I'm gonna start writing you up if you don't start clocking in and out." So I had to set reminders on my phone to do it because there was such a switch that happened that it completely changed it, and we see it. We James and I talk about it all the time. We see it when a guy turns commission, he starts performing like way better than he was always, right? There's usually probably, I would guess at least like a 30% increase in sales immediately just from doing that.
Yeah, I think how was explained to me, you went from what's called the time and effort economy, which is the hourly wage. You put time in, you get paid an hourly wage, to you shifted to what's called the results economy. And in our business, the results economy, where I only get paid if I produce results, is the closest thing we have to an entrepreneur in our industry. Like that is the definition of an entrepreneur, which is, I only get paid if I create value for others. Period. Where in the time and effort economy, I get paid if I clock in and I clock out. Period. It's like but the results economy is what you're in, and there's a certain individual that thrives in the results economy. I wouldn't say it's everybody. I mean, far from it.
It scares the heck out of some guys.
Yeah. And what I found is those who put security in an hourly wage struggle in the results economy. Those who have security in themselves, in their own ability to perform, thrive. If you know, hey, I know how to perform, you're going to love the results economy.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you're an hourly employee, and this is just me, right? Listen, commission's not for everybody. It can be stressful for a lot of people, and it can be very stressful. But if I put myself hourly, what am I working towards? Do I just need to keep performing well and then hope I do well and then ask my boss for a raise every year and this and that? I love the idea that my rewards are based on merit, right? So no matter what, if I perform well, I'm recognized and compensated for that.
It's great.
Right?
I love it.
Where it was not like that in Seattle, right? I think I just kind of slipped between the cracks, and I felt like there was so much more I could do for that company that I worked for. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that they saw it, right? And it is what it is. But the system, the commission-based system, right? The calls are the limit, right? Because if I've got calls to run, that's the only thing that limits me is if they're at the end of the day, there's no more calls left for today. You can go home. That's my limit right there, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, it's up to me.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's powerful, being in control.
It like is. That. I like to call that, if it's meant to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
So let's share some of your process on a typical electrical call. You walk in. Yeah. Kind of set that up for me. I know you've had 2 this morning. Give me a typical call that Wolf goes through. And then as you're going through that, what is it that, again, in that call that you think you do that's world class?
So this is tough because I'm going to give a disclaimer to start that I don't recommend that people run calls the way I do. Okay? Not everybody, at least. And you'll get why in a second. So I'm not, I'm a friendly guy, but I'm not a bubbly person, and I can't be that person. It would feel forced. It wouldn't feel natural. I very much want to hone in on your problem and get your problem solved when I first get to the call. So very professional meeting right off the bat, because first impressions are very important, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to look presentable. It's huge. I think that's one of the main things that guys in this industry do not understand. If I have a technician that comes up to my door and his shirt's untucked, he's got dirt all over his clothes, and he just looks like a schlep, I don't want that guy in my house, let alone me giving him any money, right? So look presentable, look professional, and then know how to human, right? So like we were talking about earlier, tell him your name, tell him who you're with, and then for me, I get straight to the point. Hey, I see you got an outlet not working today. Where do you want to start? Go ahead and take me to the problem, right? So I get right to it. I'm not I'm not, hey, how's it going? Oh, your dog, your wife, this, that, and the other. I'm not building rapport at that point. I want to go focus on their problem, right? I want to let them know I'm here to solve your issue.
Which, why
I'm
wouldn't you recommend
quiet.
that to everybody? That's powerful, my friend. That's
Yeah,
powerful.
but I think here's the reason I say that to you, because if you take the majority of sales and service classes I've taken, they tell you to do the opposite. They tell you to like really like that first impression really needs to be, oh, hey, I'm Wolfgang, Baker Brothers, blah blah blah.
But do you think those sales
I
trainers
think,
have sold anything in their life?
yeah, I don't know. So for
Those that
like I
can't,
said,
those that can't do, teach.
yeah.
Come
So
on.
focus on the issue, focus on the problem.
Yeah.
I'm not building rapport right away. One of the things I do too is I'm reading the homeowner, right? What kind of person am I dealing with here?
Let's
Kind of
get to the.
doing like
Let's get
a
to yeah.
psychological assessment as we're going through the problem. And then once I feel like I have an idea, once I think I've got my finger on the pulse of who this person is, and now we can start to talk a little bit more. So as I'm easing them into, here's what we got going, here's what today's, going to look like, here's what's going on with your electrical system. I'm also kind of probing to get, every customer's got a, there's a moment, there's a tangible moment with every customer where you click, where you find something that either they like about you or you have in common. And my goal is to get to that point, because once you get there, the rest is smooth sailing. Once a customer knows you, they like you, they trust you, they feel like you're all right. This person is here to help me. Once you get there, then you can just run the call, right? The hard part is getting that done, because whether they show it, whether they're a good actor or not, they don't trust you. You walk in that door, they don't trust you. Even if they've used Baker Brothers before, you've got a foot up on them, right? So you're ahead with that person because they know your company, they like your company, but they don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to assure them that I'm here to solve their problem. Once they have that in their mind, the rest is smooth sailing, right? And that, I think that looks wildly different for every single customer. And that is the hardest part about the job, is figuring out how to get there with your customer. And then after that, you just walk around, solve their problem. If their problem's $300, their problem's $300. Fix it for them. Get out of there. If their problem's $30,000, their problem's $30,000. Treat it the same as the $300 call. But you've made that rapport, and it's going to sell either way.
So basic yet so profound, Wolf. Really, just great. So good. So good. I there was something I was thinking about that I wanted to ask and have you dig in further. And oh yeah, I know what it was. So if I were to look at a call, right? Say there's what's your typical call? An hour, hour and a half, 30 minutes? What's a typical call?
Say 45 minutes.
If you're selling a $20,000 job, is it still 45 minutes?
I'm selling a $40,000 job. Is that what you said?
No. Just a $20,000 job. Just a small $20,000
So it's a
job.
$20,000 call. It's probably not getting sold right then and there.
Okay.
So
you're
I'm
coming
probably
back.
there if it's a $20,000 job, I'm probably there between 1 and 2 hours. And I'm probably
The
following
first
back
time.
with this person over the course of the next couple days to weeks. It's very hard for people to make that big of a decision right on the spot. It's happened many times before, but one of the things that I do a little bit differently than a lot of technicians in our electrical department is I really work on my follow-ups very heavily, where, I think some of the other techs are getting into it now. They started going through numbers, and then after the GOAT Awards, we started really pushing on, what was the young lady's name who did 9 million for, was it Parker
Sales
and
recovery.
Sons?
Yeah, sales recovery.
Sales recovery. The one who did 9 million. I was telling people, I was like, there's sales recovery teams doing $9 million at
Yeah.
other companies, and you guys don't want to call your customers back after you leave. just something to chew on. Don't you think about that, right? So, but to kind of go back to your question, yeah, I don't know. I'd say an hour is like a sweet spot. But, there's calls that have been at for 5 minutes. It depends.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say hours kind of a sweet spot for a call, right? If I've already figured the problem out and I've gone through the process of getting everything laid out for you, if I'm there for more than 2 hours, something wrong, something's happening, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
overstayed my welcome.
Mm-hmm.
The call shouldn't go over 2 hours unless you're physically doing the job.
Right. So then let me take an hour. So if Wolf is in a call for 60 minutes,
Yep.
how much of that is relationship building and getting to know your client, analyzing your client versus doing the technical work on average?
About half.
So 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
So 50% of the time you're fixing the equipment, 50% of the time you're fixing the client.
Well, there's a little introductory period where you gotta, I'm Wolfgang. Let's go look at the problem. They've showed me the problem. And then from there, I need to actually kind of dive in, right? Figure out what's going on. And then I like to get all the information about a house first, about the call, before I really sit down with the homeowner and start discussing, right? So whatever that looks like, if I've sold a diagnostic, let's just say this is the easiest way to frame it, right? Is I've gone out because there's something not working in the home, right? So we get
Mm-hmm.
out. It's 5 minutes. We've done all the pleasantries, and they're off. Okay, I'll be in my computer room if you need me. You just go ahead and do your thing. So now I'm taking 20 minutes, 25 minutes to go through the home, figure out exactly what the problem is, kind of inspect, come up with some estimates for them, and then we're going to sit down. And we're going to sit down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, as long as it takes to get the homeowner's questions answered. And so they have a full understanding of what it is that I've found and what's going on with their home. So I'd say a good average for that is, 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. Question I have is challenges you faced on your journey and how you overcame them.
Well, I mean, the big one was,
February
the mental one we
2024.
were talking about from
February
February.
2024. I think you already spent some time on that one, but go ahead. Anything else come to mind when you think back on that?
That was the big one. I mean, there's small challenges, daily to weekly, right? And they're always something different. I'm trying to think of something that comes up more often or was happening a lot that I figured out a solution to. I don't think there's anything else that's that big. I think the mental thing is just so important.
How about being tripped up
Go ahead.
technically? And, there's technicians out there right now that are probably can get super insecure on the electrical technical side because they don't really know what they're doing. And yet they're selling
advice
stuff.
I have to those guys, right? If you don't know the answer to a question, you got to tell the homeowner you don't know the answer to that question, but then you confidently need to tell them that we're going to figure it out, right? It's okay to not know something. I don't know who what's his name was, right? I told you that before
Roger
we
Bannister,
started today.
right.
No,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
What's the point in me nodding to you and saying, yeah, I know who that is? You know what I mean? If you don't know something, you don't know something. It helps to know all the things. It looks better if you know the answer. But if you don't, you're going to run into stuff, right? And just one of the things that I tell customers that kind of ties into this idea is at the end of the day, these installs that we do for customers, you put in an AC, you put in an electrical panel, these things are bound to have problems, right? What I want is the company that's going to come back and how they handle when something doesn't go well, right?
Mm.
So when you don't know the answer to a question, how do you get that answer, right? Is this guy going to figure it out? Is he going to make a phone call? Is he going to look it up? How, if I can, the electrical, the national electrical exam that we have to take to get licensed is an open book test. And the questions are randomized. The reason it is that way is they don't need to prove that you know all the codes. They need to prove that if you're on the job site, you can find the answers. It's the same thing. So I think for those guys that don't know something, confidently tell that customer, oh, I've never run into this before. Let's learn together, right? Whatever that looks like for you. Just be confident about it. Assure them that you're still going to figure out the problem. You're not going to know all the answers. They don't expect you to have every answer, right?
What a great final message to leave a new young technician that thinks that they need to know all the answers. You know what I mean? Because
I still don't know all the answers. I run into stuff all the time. I turn it into a fun thing. Someone asked me a question I don't know the answer to. They stopped me. I said, that's great. I've never had that one before. I love to get new stuff, right? Let's figure that out,
This is a $3 million electrical salesperson, everyone, that is saying he doesn't have all the answers. Something to learn for all of us right there. Wolf, I appreciate you. It is no wonder to me why you've had the success that you've had and why you continue to have success. I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you, having this interview, learning a boatload. I got a whole page of notes, my friend. So thank you for your time. Thank you for all your thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being Roger.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being our Roger Bannister. And I can tell you there are many people that want to follow in your footsteps. And I think after this interview, they're going to want to even follow more in your footsteps. So thank you for being that leader and demonstrating leadership. I really appreciate that. And for the rest of I know our audience, I know our audience can appreciate who you are because you're very much that person that wants to keep learning and keep growing. You're very much that person that wants to make their future bigger than their past. So as I normally do on our sign-off, team, here's to a bigger future. Thanks again, Roger. I mean, Wolf. Thanks again, buddy.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
Good to talk to you.
Take care. Great talking with you. Go sell those 2 calls, buddy.